Okay, hi everyone. Good morning. My name is Anu. I'm a fourth year PhD candidate at the University of Arizona. I wanted to thank everyone for inviting me to speak a little bit today about a community partnership that was done between the Native Environmental Health Equity Center and Missouri Breaks, as well as the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, about trash burning. Okay. So I wanted to just quickly give an overview of the Native Environmental Health Equity Center. So this is a center that's housed at the University of New Mexico, and it was basically founded to work in partnership with rural and tribal communities to do research to support public health and to reduce environmental exposures. And so here in South Dakota, we've mostly been working with the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe and community concerns from that we heard were really focused around the dumping and burning of trash. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be talking to you about today. Okay, so trash burning is an environmental health challenge. We know that there are many barriers that exist to proper trash disposal that lead to the dumping and burning of waste. And so obviously, the burning of waste can release harmful chemicals into the atmosphere that are connected to many adverse health outcomes. So this is something that our community partners had expressed lots of concerns in and wanted to investigate further. So it's an issue that's understudied on a lot of rural and tribal areas, and so we entered into a community partnership with Missouri Breaks and with the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe to better understand what exposures were coming from trash burning. So there are three main questions that I'm going to be talking about in this presentation. So the first one is what chemicals trash. The second, what challenges exist to waste or garbage management from the community's perspective. And the last one, are residents of Cheyenne River exposed to chemicals created by trash burning? So we'll start by going over the first question. Okay, so I wanted to start by just mentioning that we had several discussions with the community to identify where we were going to sample to see what chemicals were coming off of these different burn sites. So we identified 7 community dump sites that you can see on the map on the right side of the screen, but we found that there's actually no burning happening at any of these sites. So we had to kind of pivot and think about where was the burning actually happening, and our community partners were able to identify that there were actually 3 sites that were more household burn barrels level exposure where there was burning happening. So we decided to focus on those sites, and we set up what are called passive silicone sampling bands, which Dr. Erdei is walking around to show you, which I'll explain on the next slide. But we put these at the different sites in fall of 2022 and winter and spring of 2023 to look at the chemicals that were coming off of these different trash burns in different seasons. Okay, so just to quickly go over, what are these passive sampling bands? So you can see them, they're kind of being passed around right now. There's also a picture of them on the top of the screen here. These are basically devices that are really small, they're kind of the size of a wristband, and you can put them near these different burn sites. And the way that they work is any chemicals that are in the atmosphere from the burns are kind of taken into those bands. They're sequestered into the matrix of those passive sampling bands. And we can send them off to a lab in Oregon that does testing for lots of different kinds of chemicals, and they send us back those results. So the way this worked is we talked to our Missouri Breaks and community partners, and this was really completely motivated by the community. They identified the sites that we were going to put these bands at. So here's some pictures of what the bands looked like when they were put up. And they left them there for the duration of the burn. We collected them, we sent them off to the lab, and we got chemical results. So what did we find from putting these bands out? We found that there were 28 different chemicals that were detected from trash burning, and they're shown in the word cloud on the screen here. I know this can be a little daunting, so I wanted to take you all through kind of the 3 major classes of chemicals that we found. So the first class of chemicals were pesticides. We also found something called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, and really the only thing that you need to know about these chemicals is that, one, they are tied to carcinogenic health outcomes, but they are also completely created from burning itself. So we suspect that these chemicals were created by the burn, not necessarily from the actual items that were burned. And the last class of chemicals that we really saw were phthalates. Phthalates are a class of chemicals that are commonly used in plastic products to make them more stretchy and bendy. So that's likely why we saw them in the burn. And these are also a class of chemicals that has been tied to adverse health outcomes. Several of them are banned by the US EPA, and PCB 94, which you see in the word cloud, is also a chemical that was banned in the 1970s by the US government, but we still saw it in our bans. So something that's important is obviously communicating these results to the community, and we wanted to do this in a really community-centered and driven way. So I, alongside our Missouri Breaks partners and the Tribal Sanitarian and other folks, were able to co-create this infographic that kind of explains, burning items such as personal care products, insect repellent, plastics can release the chemicals that I just showed into the atmosphere. And these chemicals can be harmful to both human health as well as the health of all living things and can accumulate in our air, soil, and water. And we also wanted to end with kind of a call to action as to if you can reduce and reuse or send trash to your local landfill, those are great alternatives, but if you must burn trash, please burn upwind and away from people. And I wanted to just quickly plug that this infographic was created into an info video. And so here's a QR code in case anyone wants to take a picture of this, and please come up to me later if you want a link to this that didn't get a chance. Okay, so I wanted to move on to the second part. So what challenges exist to waste management from the community's perspective? So after we saw all of these chemical results, we wanted to really discuss what we found with the tribal waste disposal leadership. And we found that only about 50% of households in the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe area were utilizing the free garbage services. So clearly there were some challenges to utilizing these services, which include cost. So several folks mentioned that obtaining trash bags and disposal containers were difficult. Also, for more private and remote homes, garbage services were less accessible. And a last major challenge that came up was the disposal of plastic net wrap. So this is the thin plastic that comes around hay bales. This was a product that we found was not able to be sent to the landfill, and when it was burned, it released lots of chemicals into the atmosphere. So this is a challenge that needs to be addressed. So with the last few minutes, I'm just going to quickly mention the last part of the research, which is focused on are residents of Cheyenne River exposed to chemicals created by trash burning? So moving from the environmental monitoring, so looking at just generally what chemicals are created from these burn sites, to thinking about on the individual scale, what are people exposed to in their day-to-day lives. And I wanted to mention this part of the study was done by Dr. Teddy Wolde-Johannes, who just graduated with his PhD from the University of New Mexico. So if anyone has questions, I can direct them to him as well. Okay, so the approach of this study is to have folks who are enrolled in the study actually wear those passive silicone sampling bands that were passed around earlier, and they will kind of mark what kind of chemicals people are exposed to in their day-to-day lives. They also are filling out activity logs, and so you see an example of a daily activity log on the slide here. So it asks questions such as, what type of transportation did you use? Did you come into contact with trash burning? What kind of fuels did you use for cooking? Things like that. And then these are also coupled with interviews, and all three of those are put together to create an individual scale exposure assessment. So far, we've deployed wristbands and surveys in 2 different seasons, and that's kind of ongoing to analyze the data right now. There's been 10 wristbands that we have chemical information for, and 110 completed surveys. Okay, so the survey results are indicating that there are really high rates of waste disposal across Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, so ranging from 16% to 100%. And this just reiterates that. So we see that there are high rates of waste disposal or trash disposal by burning, and also 17% of residents are doing so at home or are exposed to trash burning in their home in some way. And I just wanted to end by just quickly showing the results of the silicone sampling chemical results. So these are from the 10 bands that have been analyzed so far. So we see that all of these chemicals that are shown in the blue table were detected, and there are a lot of the same chemicals that were detected by the first bands in the environmental monitoring part of the study that are coming from several of the same sources that we suspect were coming from the first part. There's also these 3 chemicals at the bottom, which are those polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons I mentioned earlier that are completely created by the burning itself. So really the point of this study, or this results slide, is just to show that we're seeing a lot of the same chemicals in the individual study as well as from the environmental monitoring. Okay. And I wanted to just quickly end, this is the last slide, by saying we're still assessing the survey data, and there's more wristbands that we're sending in to assess the chemical results. We're preparing report back letters for the participants of the study. And like I mentioned before, there's going to be an integration of those activity logs with the chemical results and the interviews, and that's still ongoing right now. But just ending by saying, we understand there are several challenges that exist to waste management and trash management in rural and tribal communities. So reduce and reuse, send trash to your local landfill, but if neither of these options are available, if you must burn trash, please burn upwind and at least 1/4 of a mile or 400 feet away from people. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation today. I wanted to thank everyone who came out, and Dr. Erdei and our community partners, and we're happy to take questions. Come find us. Thank you.